Welcome to Suzy's Open Diary. I'm Suzy, and this podcast is a space for reflection, curiosity, and learning more about yourself through the practice of asking honest questions. The purpose of this podcast is to slow things down, to listen inward, and notice what comes up as you begin to question your thoughts and experiences. What I share here comes from my personal thoughts and lived experiences. This podcast isn't meant to replace therapy or professional support, but to offer another gentle practice for self-understanding. Thank you for being here and taking this time for yourself. Let's begin. Today's question is, what makes us vulnerable to manipulation? I find myself thinking about manipulation differently. Usually, when we realize we've been manipulated, our attention goes straight to the other person. What did they do? Why did they do it? How could they do something like that? I've asked those questions myself, but I found myself asking a different one. What was happening inside of me that made the manipulation work? That question made me look at myself. Because for me, I realized I wanted something. I wanted the relationship. I wanted him. And because I wanted something so badly, there were things I was willing not to see. Of course, the red flags were there. But acknowledging them would have meant making a choice I wasn't ready to make. And that's where this became less about him and more about understanding what made me vulnerable to the manipulation. Because manipulation needs something to work with. And in my experience, what it had to work with was my wanting. That's what made me vulnerable. Maybe manipulation works best when what we want becomes more important than what we're willing to see. That doesn't make me responsible for someone else's deception. They're responsible for that. But I'm responsible for understanding what made their manipulation work on me. And I think there's something powerful about knowing that. Because now, I'm not only learning about the person who manipulated me, I'm learning something about me. And maybe that's the part of manipulation we don't talk about enough. Not just why they manipulated me, but what was happening inside of me that made the manipulation work. Because understanding that part of ourselves may make us a little less vulnerable to it next time. So let me ask you this. If you ever felt manipulated, have you ever stopped to ask, what made you vulnerable to it? If this reflection resonated with you, please continue to follow. I'll see you on the next page.